Hi, Year 12. Miss Becca one more time, sharing with you a skill that you need for your research paper, and that is nominalization. So what is nominalization? Nominalization means taking a verb, adjective, or adverb and turning it into a noun. You guys should be pretty familiar with this concept, even if you did not know what it was called, because you do the same thing in Bahasa Indonesia. So like, for example, you might take the verb makan, to eat, and turn it into the noun makanan, food. Or you can do it with adjectives as well, baik, kebaikan. And you do this through the use of affixes, adding something before or after the word, or both. And in English it's very, very similar. Most of the time we will use suffixes to change verbs or adjectives into nouns. So like the verb to decide might become the noun decision, or the verb to refuse might become the noun refusal. And it works for adjectives too. The adjective beautiful could become the noun beauty. One particular thing to note here is that when you add the ing and to create the form like to run becomes the noun running, that is a specific grammatical form called a gerund, running. And that could be important for writing at some point. So it's a thing to note, even though it's not necessarily relevant for your research paper. Alright, but also note the first bullet point here is that not all nominalizations will have an ending form. Most of them do, but you can have verbs and nouns that are related, but they don't change their form. So like to plan becomes a plan. You can also have some tricky situations where adding one of the suffixes actually changes the meaning of the word to mean something different. So the verb to tutor means to help someone learn something, but the noun tuition means money that you pay to go to school. So I've actually heard IICS students use this incorrectly and say I have tuition after school. What they mean is that they have a tutorial after school. They do not have tuition after school unless they're going to RO to pay their school fee. Alright? So be careful with nominalization, because sometimes you can create what is a noun and it looks good, but it actually has a new meaning and not the meaning you're trying to convey. So you do have to be careful with nominalization. But in general, these suffixes are the basic rules, and you guys will be able to rely on that rule most of the time. Alright? So why do we use nominalization? The one that's most important for you at this point is the first bullet point, that it allows us to put more content into a clause and convey more information in each sentence. That is, to create more dense and more complex sentence structures. So that's really why it's a big deal and why it's being graded as part of Assessment Task 1. Some other purposes for nominalization is the more poetic sense, to express an abstract concept like revolution or beauty, or to hide the agent behind an action. What that means is that if I have it's very commonly used like if I have a verb that has a strong negative connotation, like to rebel against the administration. The students rebelled against the administration to bring about policy changes. If I wanted to hide the fact that you guys were rebelling, if I wanted to make you guys look better, instead of tying the students to rebellion, to the verb rebel, I could use the noun rebellion. The rebellion against the administration brought about changes, and so that nominalization helps me hide the agent behind the action. And then, of course, as we referred to last week with transitions, that taking a verb and turning it into a noun can help you maintain connections between ideas and improve your flow in your writing. So for example, I could say the student was forced to decide between AP Math and Extension 1 Math. Well, I could take that verb, decide, and turn it into a noun. This decision had an impact on his college application process. And so that I've connected those two sentences together by turning the main verb from the first sentence into the subject of the next sentence in nominalized form. Right? So it can improve your flow, and it can also get, the most important for you guys right now is number 1 and number 4. Improve your flow and help you get a lot of information into a clause. So what makes this hard? Well, reading and understanding nominalizations is hard, as well as writing and using them appropriately. So in reading and understanding them, you end up with really complex sentences like the one here, in which you might have this key phrase, emergence of resistance, where you've actually got a whole lot of important content words here. To emerge means to bring something forth, to resist means to push against something, right? Or to not want to do something, to not want to change. And so all of those ideas are in this like phrase, emergence of resistance. And so it's really complex. And what you guys would need to do is identify that these are nominalized forms. In this case, they both do have the ending, the clue from the ending. And then you would want to break them down and use the base verb to find out what's really going on here, and then use other information from the context to figure out the meaning. So in this case, begin, or to not want to change something. You could come up with a sentence like, bacteria and cancer cells are beginning to stop responding to antibiotics and chemotherapy. So you can take it and break it down and focus on the action of the action conveyed by the verb that's being hidden by the nominalized form, and if you make it more active, it can sometimes help you understand. But for your assessment task 1, you actually may need this in some of your sources. Breaking down and understanding your sources, you might be helped by focusing on nominalizations. But the major reason we're covering it right now is because you guys need to write and use nominalizations appropriately. And appropriately is a big deal. It's actually easy to use nominalization badly to, as we said before, create improper forms, or just to overuse them or use them in the wrong ways and at the wrong times. Okay, so here's a strategy for you guys to follow to help you use the nominalization appropriately. Start by writing a simple sentence, just a basic subject and verb, and then choose an appropriate ending to turn that verb into a noun. Once you have that noun, that becomes the subject of your nominalized sentence. And then you add a second verb and some additional information, right? So here's what that might look like. Prince Shotoko admired China. Take that verb admired, turn it into a noun. Admiration of China. Add a new verb. Admiration of China brought. But I need some finishing information. Brought what? So admiration of China brought religious and scholarly ideas to Japan in the 7th century. Now that's a wonderful sentence, and it is perfectly acceptable. However, as I said, sometimes it's possible to overuse nominalization. So sometimes students rely on this too much. So it's sometimes helpful to use this process to create a complex idea, but then denominalize it to make your writing more clear, but still have the complex idea. So then we get rid of the nominalization, and we end up with Prince Shotoko admired China. As a result, he brought religious and scholarly ideas to Japan in the 7th century. So you have all of the ideas there, and it's definitely a complex thought, but it's grammatically more simple. So that would actually be a great goal for most of your writing. But for this paper, you do need to have nominalization. Because you're writing a report, text type report tends to overuse nominalization, be very extremely formal in the language. So you do need to have at least 5 examples of nominalization annotated in your report. Because your rough draft is about half of the length of the original, of the final, I want to see probably at least 2 things, and 2 examples of nominalization annotated in your assessment task 1 research report. That's it. If you have questions, please let me know. And if you want to see a sample of the research paper, they are available on my desk this week. And I will also make them available for you again in January. Good luck as you work in your research papers, guys.